Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, I'm going to be going over a recent beta build as of today. And it's in these beta builds that we can pull resources to decide what's getting buffed, what's getting nerfed. Is the strong stuff getting pulled down? Is the weak stuff getting pulled up when it comes to conduits, when it comes to covenants, and when it comes to classes? So with Shadowlands around the corner and needing to make a decision on what you want to main or what you want to play or what covenants you want to go after, there's a lot of choices you're going to have to make, and these beta build updates can really allow us to start to develop those choices to make sure that we're making the right one ultimately at the end of the day, because I feel like for most people, you're going to want to pick one that's at least competitive, and the changes in these beta build updates can allow us to make those types of decisions. So in this beta build, specifically when it comes to conduits, we see a slight nerf to Pelagos, which is likely deserving. Let go of the past. Using a spell or ability increases your versatility by 1% for 4 seconds, down from 10. Using another spell or ability increases this amount by 1% when it is not a repeat of the previous spell or ability, only stacking up to 4, down from 5. Still, Pelagos is strong, with the initial Soulbind conduit being a mastery increase for a lot of specializations, like something for a Marksmanship Hunter. I feel like with this nerf, Pelagos is still likely to be a really good Soulbind when it comes to PvE or PvP if you are going to make the decision to go Kyrian, but Pelagos did receive a slight nerf. Clea got a pretty dramatic buff. However, it's a little bit odd. This is a conduit that you're going to have to think a little bit about whether or not you'd want to go after. Valiant Strikes. You and your nearby allies' critical strikes grant you stacks of Valiant Strikes, up to 40. If a nearby ally below 50%, you consume these stacks to heal them for 1% of their maximum health per stack. So this could be a 40% heal. That's pretty dramatic. I'm wondering if that's going to be problematic. Now, PvP is standing out right away to me with this one. If you have 3 players running Clea and then someone dips below and then you all heal that target, they're going to get healed to full automatically from the Soulbind conduit. But also in Mythic Plus, if you stacked this on multiple members, would Valiant Strikes be able to sustain the group while you bring a Discipline Priest, for example, to do a lot more damage in your group? This is a pretty dramatic change overall in its healing output, and it's one that is definitely going to need to be tested and looked at as this beta build just came out. So Clea is looking a lot more appealing. Death Knights, no significant changes to Death Knights. What does this say about it? Well, they've decided to stop hacking away at Frosty K at least. They stopped, right? Hey, it already got hit pretty hard. Unholy was looking to be in a strong spot in everything across the game. Blood, I think, recently was getting some slight buffs, so it's not surprising to me to see nothing happening to Death Knight. When it comes to Demon Hunters, slight modifications to one of their legendaries that I'm not 100% sure that you'll even go after in any content in the game. You're definitely not going after it in PvP. This being Darker Nature. It's just when you slay a target that's hit by I-Beam, within 4 seconds, you get a chance to convert their soul into a demon soul. It's already a low chance, and it has this very restrictive requirement that the enemy basically needs to be slain with I-Beam. So in my mind, it's not super appealing. Just a little bit of reward changings to Vengeance, nothing happening to Vengeance, which I guess is good if you're a Vengeance tank because you're already in a strong position. Fodder to the Flame. This is the odd one out when it comes to Soulbinds, or when it comes to Covenant abilities. This is the one where you'll summon a demon, then kill the demon, and it drops a puddle on the ground. They've now made it so when the puddle is on the ground, damaging enemies hitting you for 15 seconds in it are doing 15% less damage overall. Now, it's a minor mitigation in PvE. Does Vengeance really need it? Likely not. For Havoc, it's just really awkward to use. This is awkward to use in general because, I mean, you're required to summon in a target to kill, and then it's a puddle on the ground that you need to stand in. The initial bonus of the conduit was also nerfed, whereas the duration is now only 1 second longer, down from 5. Maybe it's likely to balance it out for tanking trash pulls in Mythic Plus. With this change, I see it being a bit more desirable for Vengeance in PvE, but I think Havoc is likely to still ignore it. Druid got a buff to their honor talents, High Winds, the new honor talent to replace Cyclone. Cycloning the target leaves them reeling, reducing their damage by 30% for 4 seconds, up from 25%. I had not taken this talent at all after it got reintroduced for Cyclone, and now I'm thinking maybe I will, because it's super powered bark skin anytime you cyclone a target. It could save your team a cooldown. And now every druid has cyclone baseline, so it's listed as balance, but I'm pretty sure you can get this as any druid spec, or at least as resto, maybe not as feral. But other than that, nothing happening to druid. So no more balance buffs, no more feral buffs, no more guardian buffs. Guardian druids left out there in the cold a little bit. Marksmanship Hunter is getting a pretty big buff. I should say it's a quality of life, but it's also a buff. I felt like a lot of feedback I was seeing for hunters was that they were energy starved, focus starved during their true shot. So now baseline, while true shot is active, you generate 50% additional focus. I didn't think Hunter was going to get better, but it did. And with Frost Mage getting pulled down a bit, I think across the board, I mean, Marksman's looking insane. Raid, PvP, PvE. I was already recommending it in one of my other videos, and it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere with this recent beta build. Mages are getting a big nerf, at least Arcane is, and I think it was a deserving one to Arcane Harmony. Each time Arcane Missiles hits an enemy, the damage of your next Arcane Barrage is increased by 7%, down from 10, and this effect now only stacks 15 times instead of 30. I am still curious if it kills the player instantly, even at that level, because it was overkilling you by a huge amount with 10%, 30 times. So even with that, it might still just kill a player. Even if it doesn't, it's going to be a big hit. So while it's a big nerf, I still am curious to see if it ends up being playable. Molten Skyfall, just some wording changes. No massive changes here for any of the mage specializations. So after that recent conduit nerf in my previous video, Frost isn't looking as good, but it's still really good overall in the game. When we look at monks, what do we see coming out here? Just some anima changes and some changes to their soulbind conduits for the Kyrian. So strike with clarity, potency conduit. Weapons of Order's duration is increased by 5 seconds, and it increases your mastery by an additional 1.25 times 1%. And its scaling got nerfed down really hard. This is one that I was watching Trill's stream, and he was getting this massive mastery increase. So I'm not surprised to see this get reduced. Maybe a lot of players that were testing it weren't aware of this combination in particular, but you were getting a huge bonus of increase of damage. But this is also a pretty big nerf overall to Monk. So a bit unfortunate for Monk. Conduit changes there. Holy Paladin not getting the buffs that they would have liked to see. I mean, Light of Dawn healing for more. It's going to be great in Raid Mythic Plus. PvP, you don't care. Nothing else for Paladin. So, I mean, what do we take away from this? Ret's looking really good, and I think Prot is still looking really good. Holy Paladin. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Sure. Priest, we're seeing changes to their Shadow Mend. So in a build before this, they had made Shadow Mend when you cast it on yourself that you got increased healing done, and that seemed just ridiculously strong, whether or not it was in PvE or PvP. So they've removed that. There's no more extra healing for Shadow Mend. I think that was a smart decision overall for the game, PvE or PvP. But instead now, when you Shadow Mend yourself, you'll get 10 extra yards on your silence, which is a little bit weird. I feel like it's not going to have massive implications, but you got a pretty big nerf on the Shadow Mend, and this is going to be an indirect nerf, I think, to Disc as well, although you don't have Silence, so it's a little bit odd that Silence is here. But Disc is also now going to lose out on that bonus healing. They still have Focused Will, though, so in PvE, it's like a slight change that you're not going to heal yourself for so much. But in PvP, I think you're still going to be really hard to kill even without this bonus healing. So this is more just a tuning adjustment, something that was a bit over the top for Priest. Shadow Crash is getting a massive buff. It's going to do 170% of spell power. I feel like a lot of players have stopped looking at Shadow Crash. They broke it down into 3 charges, and you had to launch 1, 2, 3. But now it got a massive buff, so maybe we're going to look for this for burst AoE damage potentially. Aside from that, legendary buffs to the Shadow Flame Prism, which was the Shadow Fiend one. When you summon the Shadow Fiend, and it's going to do extra damage. So this is a nice little buff. This was one that I was having a lot of fun playing with initially, and it got nerf. Now it's getting buffed up a little bit. Unholy Nova is getting massive buffs. This is the Necro Lord Covenant ability for Priest. This is one that I have to admit, I wasn't honestly excited for. So I'm not that excited that it's getting buffed either. as it looks like it's going up from 119% to 150% of your spell power. And it's basically just this AoE heal. And it's going to do more based on the number of targets, so it makes it even more appealing in Raid, maybe even mandatory in Raid. But Unholy Transfusion deals now up to 375%, up from 250% shadow damage based on the number of targets over 15 seconds. And then allies who damage this target are healed for 4% of that. I'm not a big fan of this. I mean, if you're a PvEer, you probably are, because this is going to be massive just throughput. Press this immediate healing to the raid and to the group. But for myself personally, I was much more of a fan of mind games with synergy with Atonement and also in PvP, its effect. I would be really disappointed if this change to Unholy Nova meant that it was just baseline for everything. Of course, we're still in a beta build that's maybe a couple weeks before the expansion, so maybe this changes, but Necrolord Priest is looking a lot more appealing overall with these changes. Now we're looking into Rogue. This is a little bit weird of wording. So Shiv now also increases the nature damage done to the target by 20% until canceled. And that's wording that I've seen before on other abilities, and it wasn't, you'd think that means, oh, it's permanent. And then if you read that, you'd be like, I Shiv a target and I get 20% nature damage against it permanently? Or until it's dispelled? That would seem really good. That's probably seeming too good to be true. So I'm not sold on this. Not surprising to see some outlaw nerfs to their Celerity Legendary. Adrenaline Rush increases your damage by 8%, down from 10. But I was actually expecting maybe more nerfs. Rogue is still looking like a really good contender for Mythic Plus and PvP and raiding. Right now, I would say Subtlety is at the top of that, but Outlaw and Mythic Plus. And then Assassin's probably a good middle ground for most, but Outlaw definitely, and Outlaw and Sub definitely a lot better for Mythic Plus. No changes really. Invigorating Shadow Dust. Vanish reduces the remaining cooldown of your other abilities by 20 seconds, up from 15. So slight little buff to their legendaries. Soulbind Conduits fade to nothing. Finesse Conduit gaining Stealth, Vanish, or Shroud of Concealment increases your movement speed by 10% for 10 seconds. You don't care. Nimble Fingers doesn't really matter. Prepared for All. Finesse Conduit dodging attacks reduces the remaining cooldown of evasion by 2 seconds, up from 1. Successful interrupts with Kick reduce the remaining cooldown of Cloak by 4, up from 2. And the scaling looks like it got slightly buffed. Every kick you land, you get 4 seconds off your Cloak of Shadows. If you're a good rogue and know how to land some kicks, that could be pretty insane. Recuperator getting some slight nerfs, although I'm a bit worried about this one being problematic in PvP. This is the one where when you slice and dice, it heals you for 18% of your maximum health. Rushed Setup, Finesse Conduit. The energy costs of Kidney Shot, Cheap Shot, Sap, and Distract are reduced by 20%, scaled up to 48% at max rank. That could let you set up a ton of stuff as Subtlety. Not so much as any other spec, though, because it would be the main focus of this would be the reduction of Cheap Shot. So as Subtlety in PvP specifically, I see this being like a pretty good Finesse Conduit now with that massive buff. But other than that, so actually buffs to Rogue, at least in terms of their defense. Maybe for your throughput in PvE, you don't care, but some buffs to their utility overall. Enhancement Shaman. This looks like, I never know how to understand the aura changes, because so they used to be at a minus 50% damage and healing on these spells. Now they're only minus 35%, but it's only on a couple of abilities, like some of their burstier abilities and their Maelstrom abilities. These are spells you would cast with Maelstrom stacks to make them instant, right? Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning. They're going to be doing about 15% more damage, it looks like, with the way I'm reading this. So a slight buff to the Maelstrom spenders, but it comes at a trade-off. Your talents. Well, at least this one's getting buffed, but I don't think you're going to be happy about the rest. Fire Nova. Erupt a burst of fiery damage from all targets affected by your flame shock, dealing 42% attack power, up from 25%. Fire damage to up to 6 targets within 8 yards of your flame shock. So buff to Fire Nova. It was one that I feel like people weren't taking in almost any content. In PvP, it's hard to maintain the flame shock stacks. In PvE, it takes a while to get them all going. In PvP, at least everyone was playing Forceful Winds, and this one just got nerfed. Wind Fury caused each successive Wind Fury attack within 15 seconds to increase the damage of Wind Fury by 35%, down from 50, stacking up to 5 times. I'm almost kind of wondering if somebody at Blizzard plays Enhancement Shaman and they're really good at it, and they're like, yeah, this needs to be nerfed or something. Because I can't, like, I'm sitting here and I'm just like, the main talent, at least for PvP, as well as Mythic Plus, I mean, Hailstorm's getting nerfed too. Your next Frost Shock only deals 15% increased damage, down from 35. And then they buff your weird talent, the Ice Strike one. Strike your target with an Icy Blade, deals 115% of attack power, frost damage, and snaring them by 50% for 6 seconds. And they're trying to encourage you to take Ice Strike because you don't really have a good slow other than Frost Shock, and then it gets it built into your rotation, I guess. But it's a bit strange. Slashing Flames, Lava Lash now increases the damage of your Flame Shock on its target by 100% for 20 seconds. So it looks like they're trying to shift you into a Fire Nova Flame Shock build as opposed to a Hailstorm Frost Shock build or a Wind Fury, maybe trying to equal them all out. But I'm not sure these, at least in PvP, right, the Fire Nova and the Flame Shock build is going to work out in PvP. In PvE, it's also hard to get the Flame Shocks up and get them going. So overall, I feel like that's a nerf. You're getting a minor buff to your Maelstrom spenders, great, but these talent changes are a little bit odd, especially when you consider that we're looking at other classes that I would have thought were doing a lot better right now, and they didn't even really get touched at all. So it seems a little bit odd. Fae Transfusion looks like it's getting a buff for Enhance. If you fully channel Fae Transfusion, which is like you just start sucking the life away from the target, you will generate 3 stacks of Maelstrom Weapon up from 1. So a slight buff to Night Fae in this, although I think still Venthyr is looking like a pretty straightforward one for PvP. And then maybe for Mythic Plus, Kyrian to get the totem for more AoE damage and trash pulls. I feel like they're still going to struggle a bit trying to get all of the covenants specifically balanced. And then Night Fae Conduits. Night Fae Transfusion cooldown is reduced by 25 seconds. And it goes up to 40%. So I'm wondering if this means 40 seconds. Oh, no, it probably doesn't. Up to 40-second cooldown reduction. You generate Maelstrom Weapon. So they just, so this, you know what this tells me? They really want Enhancement Shaman to suck. Because, you know, you're going to have to suck the target and drain their life, and they want you to do it more often. I almost feel like this is BM. Like, this is BM. They're literally making they're buffing the suck of this covenant ability after nerfing them and not really touching a lot of the good specs. I feel bad, Enhancement Shamans. I feel bad. Warlocks, we've got buff to Shadow Bolt. PvP, you don't care at all. PvE, you care a little bit. Looks like Dark Pact got a little bit of a buff as well. The modifiers now times 1.2 up from 0.4, so maybe Dark Pact starts to see some play. It's hard to take Dark Pact over just the passive sustain healing talent though, so I think it's probably still unlikely, but you may want to try out Dark Pact. And then for Warrior, we got a whole lot of nada. So what does this mean overall? Enhancement Shaman suck. I'm kidding. So basically, not a lot is changing. I think Marksmanship Hunter is still in a really good spot. As far as meta changes, it looks like, yeah, not much is changing overall. So everything that we were expecting to this point, rogues to be strong, hunters to be strong. Frost Mage is slightly weaker after build before this, but still in a really solid spot. Not really going to see much changing in terms of tank meta either with this build. There was not really enough in it to say that. Some utility changes to Rogue overall, which is weird because it was already, I feel like it was a class that was already doing really well. So this beta build is, in my mind, maybe a little bit lackluster, but at the same time, what we can take away from it is that maybe things aren't going to change. I mean, this was not nearly as many changes as I thought we were going to have only just a couple weeks out now from the release of the game itself. So if you want to start settling in a little bit, I think this is a good sign in terms of what spec you're going after. But if you're still kind of restless, you definitely want to subscribe to the channel because I'll be bringing these beta updates as they come out, as often as they come out. So you'll know immediately whether or not a spec is going to be completely removed from the meta or brought back in. And you can find out here by subscribing, and that notification will let you know. Thank you very much for watching. Leave your comments down below about this recent beta build. I love hearing your thoughts. What are you going to be maining in Shadowlands? Do you need any help in what you're picking? I love answering the comments down below for those types of questions. And other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.